The morning mist clung to the jagged coral ridges of Peleliu Island like a shroud, and Marine Corporal James "Jimmy" Washington crouched behind a shattered palm tree, studying the seemingly impenetrable Japanese bunker complex that had held up his entire company for 3 days. It was September 15, 1944, and the temperature was already climbing toward 90 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the early hour. Washington adjusted his grip on the coil of rope slung across his shoulder and fingered the combat knife at his belt, completely unaware that within the next 6 hours, his improvised solution would revolutionize small unit tactics across the entire Pacific Theater. The Marines of Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Regiment, believed they were facing another week of bloody inch-by-inch fighting against this particular strongpoint, just as they had encountered at every other fortified position since landing on this coral nightmare. They had no idea that Washington's background as a steeplejack from Detroit would provide the key to a problem that conventional military doctrine had failed to solve. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. It really helps support the channel. What unfolded over the next few hours would demonstrate how individual innovation, born from civilian experience and applied with military precision, could accomplish what entire platoons armed with heavy weapons had failed to achieve. This is the story of how one Marine's unconventional approach not only saved countless lives, but established new protocols that would be used throughout the remainder of the Pacific Campaign. The bunker complex that had stymied Fox Company was a masterpiece of Japanese defensive engineering. Constructed from reinforced concrete and coral aggregate, the primary structure measured approximately 40 feet in length and 20 feet in width, with walls 3 feet thick. The Japanese engineers had positioned it to command a natural choke point between 2 coral ridges, making any frontal approach a deadly funnel. Intelligence estimates suggested the complex housed between 20 and 30 soldiers, armed with at least 2 heavy machine guns, several light machine guns, and enough ammunition and supplies to hold their position for weeks. Washington studied the position through his field glasses, noting details that his fellow Marines had missed during their previous reconnaissance efforts. Born and raised in Detroit's industrial heart, he had spent 7 years before the conflict working as a steeplejack, maintaining and repairing the city's towering smokestacks and water towers. This dangerous profession had taught him to see structures differently than most people, to identify stress points, access routes, and vulnerabilities that were invisible from ground level. The son of Marcus Washington, a foundry worker at Ford Motor Company's River Rouge complex, and Sarah Washington, who took in laundry to supplement the family income, Jimmy had learned early that survival often depended on finding solutions that others overlooked. Growing up in the Corktown neighborhood during the Great Depression had instilled in him a resourcefulness that the Marine Corps had recognized and cultivated. His drill instructors at Parris Island had noted his exceptional problem-solving abilities and recommended him for advanced combat training. Captain Robert Mitchell, Fox Company's commanding officer, approached Washington's position with evident frustration etched across his weathered features. A veteran of Guadalcanal and Bougainville, Mitchell had seen enough of these fortified positions to know that conventional assault tactics would cost him half his remaining men. The company had already lost 37 Marines in 3 days of fighting, and division headquarters was demanding results. "Washington, you have been studying that position for 2 hours, Mitchell said, settling into cover beside the corporal. "Tell me you see something we can use, because I'm running out of options and men." Washington lowered his field glasses and turned to his commanding officer with a thoughtful expression. "Sir, I have been thinking about this all wrong. We keep trying to go through their strongest points, but what if we came from where they cannot see us coming?" Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "The entire approach is under observation, Corporal. They have clear fields of fire in every direction." "Yes, sir, from ground level," Washington replied, pointing toward the coral ridge that rose behind the bunker complex. "But that position up there, about 60 feet above their roof, that ridge runs all the way back to our lines. If someone could get up there with the right equipment." Captain Mitchell studied the terrain Washington was indicating. The coral ridge was steep and appeared virtually unclimbable, its surface worn smooth by decades of tropical weather. Even if someone could somehow scale it, the distance from the ridge to the bunker was at least 40 feet of open air. "Corporal, that is a sheer face. No one could climb that without proper mountaineering equipment. And even then, how would you get close enough to do any damage?" Washington smiled for the first time in days. "Sir, I spent 7 years climbing things that were not supposed to be climbed, and I have an idea about getting close enough." The plan that Washington outlined to Captain Mitchell was so unconventional that it took considerable discussion before the officer was willing to consider it seriously. Washington proposed to scale the Coral Ridge under cover of darkness, using techniques he had learned as a steeplejack. Once at the top, he would use rope and grappling equipment to descend directly onto the bunker's roof, where he could disable the position from its most vulnerable point. "The Japanese expect attacks from the sides or front," Washington explained. "They probably have minimal defenses on their roof because they figure no one can get there. Most bunkers like this have ventilation shafts and access hatches that are only lightly secured from the inside." Mitchell was skeptical but intrigued. Traditional assault tactics had proven ineffective against this particular strongpoint, and division artillery was reluctant to commit the massive firepower necessary to destroy such a well-constructed position. The bunker was too close to friendly positions for naval gunfire support, and the coral construction made it nearly impervious to standard explosive charges. "What would you need?" Mitchell asked. Washington had already compiled a mental list: 100 feet of climbing rope, my personal climbing gear from home, a bag of demolition charges, and maybe 2 volunteers who are not afraid of heights. The equipment requisition proved easier than expected. Washington's personal climbing gear had arrived in his sea bag and remained largely untouched since landing. The rope was standard Marine Corps issue, and the demolition charges were readily available from the company's engineering supplies. Finding volunteers, however, presented a more significant challenge. Private First Class David Chen, a second-generation Chinese-American from San Francisco's Chinatown, stepped forward first. Chen had worked in his family's restaurant before enlisting, but had spent his adolescence climbing the steep hills and building fire escapes of his neighborhood. His small stature and natural agility made him an ideal candidate for the dangerous mission. "My grandfather always said that the hardest problems have the simplest solutions," Chen told Washington as they reviewed the plan. "Sometimes you just have to approach from a different direction." Lance Corporal Michael Red O'Brien from Boston volunteered second. O'Brien had worked construction before the conflict, specializing in high-rise steelwork. His experience with heights and his steady hands under pressure made him a natural choice for the operation. The 3 men spent the remainder of the day studying the target and refining their approach. Sergeant First Class Frank Torres, Fox Company's senior non-commissioned officer, joined the planning session with considerable reservations. Torres had seen too many innovative plans result in unnecessary casualties, and he was initially opposed to what he considered a reckless scheme. "This is not standard operating procedure," Torres argued during the briefing. "We have proven methods for reducing fortified positions. Why risk 3 good Marines on an untested idea?" Washington understood Torres's concerns, but he also recognized that conventional methods had already claimed too many lives without achieving decisive results. "Sergeant, I respect your experience, but sometimes you need to try something different. My climbing experience is not theoretical, it is practical. I know what I can do." The detailed planning session revealed the complexity of the operation. Washington would lead the assault team up the Coral Ridge, using a route he had identified during his reconnaissance. The climb would take approximately 2 hours under ideal conditions, requiring them to begin their ascent at 2200 hours to reach the top by midnight. Once at the summit, Washington would secure a rappelling line and descend to the bunker's roof. Intelligence suggested that most Japanese bunkers included ventilation systems and access hatches that were designed to be operated from the interior. Washington's plan called for him to locate these access points and insert explosive charges directly into the bunker's interior. Chen and O'Brien would remain on the ridge to provide security and assist with the rope work. If Washington encountered difficulties or became incapacitated, Chen would descend to complete the mission. O'Brien would maintain communications with the company command post and coordinate any necessary supporting actions. The equipment preparation required careful attention to detail. Washington inspected every piece of rope and hardware, ensuring that each component could bear the necessary loads under stress conditions. His civilian climbing gear included specialized pitons and carabiners that were superior to anything in the Marine Corps inventory, designed specifically for the demands of industrial steeplejack work. The demolition charges required particular consideration. Washington calculated that 6 pounds of TNT, properly placed inside the bunker, would be sufficient to neutralize the position without causing excessive structural collapse. The charges needed to be configured for timer detonation, allowing the assault team time to evacuate the immediate area before the explosion. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, the battalion commanding officer, reviewed the plan during the afternoon briefing with a mixture of skepticism and hope. Morrison had commanded the 2nd Battalion through some of the fiercest fighting in the Pacific, and he recognized both the potential value and inherent risks of Washington's proposal. "Corporal Washington, this is highly irregular," C. Morrison stated, "but conventional methods have not proven effective against this particular target. I'm going to approve your plan with the following modifications. You will have radio communication with the command post throughout the operation, and you will abort if conditions become unsuitable." The radio communication requirement presented a technical challenge. Standard field radios were too heavy and cumbersome for climbing operations. The solution came from the battalion communications section, which provided a lightweight SCR 500 field telephone with enough wire to maintain contact throughout the mission. As evening approached, Washington found himself reviewing the plan with a mixture of confidence and apprehension. His civilian climbing experience had prepared him for the technical challenges, but he had never attempted an operation of this complexity under combat conditions. The presence of enemy soldiers, the potential for defensive measures he had not anticipated, and the pressure of knowing that his fellow Marines were counting on him added layers of stress that no amount of civilian experience could have provided. Private First Class Robert Johnson, Fox Company's communications specialist, approached Washington as he prepared his equipment for the night mission. Johnson, an African-American from Alabama, had followed Washington's planning with particular interest. "Corporal, I wanted to tell you something," Johnson said quietly. "A lot of the men are watching what you do tonight, not just because of the mission, but because of what it means." Washington understood Johnson's implication. As one of the few African-American Marines in a predominantly white unit, Washington carried additional burdens that his fellow Marines rarely considered. His success or failure would be viewed through a racial lens that added pressure beyond the purely military considerations. "I am just trying to do my job," Washington replied, "same as everyone else." "I know," Johnson said, "but for some of us that means a little more." The conversation reminded Washington of the broader context surrounding his military service. The Marine Corps had only recently begun accepting African-American enlistments, and those who served often found themselves under scrutiny that their white counterparts did not face. Success was expected but not acknowledged. Failure was magnified and used to justify continued discrimination. These thoughts occupied Washington's mind as he checked his equipment one final time. His climbing harness, modified from a steeplejack safety belt, was designed to distribute weight evenly across his torso while providing multiple attachment points for rope and equipment. The combat knife secured to his belt was not standard Marine Corps issue, but a custom blade his father had given him before his deployment, forged from high-carbon steel and balanced for both utility and defense. The rope Washington had selected for the mission was 3/4-inch manila hemp, chosen for its combination of strength and flexibility. Hemp rope was preferred by professional climbers for its natural grip and resistance to weather conditions. Each coil had been inspected for fraying or weak points that might fail under load. Captain Mitchell conducted a final briefing as darkness settled over the battlefield. Fox Company would maintain their current positions throughout the night, ready to exploit any success achieved by the assault team. If Washington's mission succeeded, the company would advance immediately to occupy the neutralized bunker complex. If the mission failed, conventional assault preparations would resume at dawn. "Remember," Mitchell told his assembled platoon leaders, "this operation depends on stealth and precision. No one fires unless directly engaged. We cannot risk compromising Washington's team with unnecessary noise or light." The approach march to the base of the Coral Ridge required careful navigation through terrain that remained under sporadic Japanese observation. Washington led his small team through a circuitous route that utilized every available piece of cover, moving slowly and deliberately to avoid detection. The night was humid and still, with enough ambient light from stars to permit navigation without artificial illumination. Chen carried the communications wire and telephone equipment, carefully laying out the wire as they moved to ensure unbroken contact with the command post. O'Brien managed the demolition charges and backup climbing equipment, maintaining responsibility for the mission's explosive component. The base of the Coral Ridge presented a formidable challenge even for an experienced climber. The rock face rose nearly vertically for the first 30 feet before transitioning to a steep slope that might be manageable with proper technique. Washington studied the surface with his flashlight, identifying potential handholds and planning his route. "The coral is sharp," he told his teammates, "so we need to be careful about cuts and abrasions. Cut hands cannot grip properly, and we cannot afford injuries during the climb." Washington began his ascent at 2200 hours exactly, working slowly and methodically up the cliff face. His steeplejack training had taught him that patience and proper technique were more important than speed when dealing with challenging climbs. Each handhold was tested before committing his full weight, each foothold verified for stability. The coral surface proved both helpful and treacherous. The natural texture provided excellent grip when Washington could find solid sections, but the sharp edges threatened to slice through rope or injure exposed skin. He wore leather gloves to protect his hands, but maintaining sensitivity for grip assessment required a delicate balance. Chen followed closely behind, using the route that Washington established while managing the communications wire. The wire had to be secured at regular intervals to prevent tangling or breakage, adding complexity to an already challenging climb. Chen's restaurant work had given him strong hands and arms, but this was his first experience with serious climbing. O'Brien brought up the rear, carrying the heaviest load, but benefiting from the route established by his teammates. His construction background provided familiarity with working at heights, though he had never attempted anything comparable to this cliff face. The demolition charges added weight and bulk that complicated his movements, requiring careful positioning to maintain balance. The first 30 feet of climbing consumed nearly an hour, but Washington's careful pace allowed all three Marines to reach the transition point safely. The slope above was steep but manageable, requiring scrambling technique rather than pure rock climbing skills. Washington estimated another hour to reach the summit. Communication checks with the command post confirmed that their progress remained undetected by Japanese observers. The enemy positions showed no signs of increased activity or alertness, suggesting that Washington's approach route was indeed concealed from their observation. The climb to the ridge summit proved less technically demanding, but more physically exhausting than the initial cliff face. The coral slope was unstable in places, requiring the Marines to test each step carefully to avoid triggering a rockfall that might compromise their mission. Washington's breathing was controlled, but labored as the physical demands of the climb accumulated. Chen struggled more visibly with the physical demands, his smaller stature making some of the longer reaches between handholds particularly challenging. O'Brien's strength allowed him to compensate for the additional weight he carried, but the demolition pack created balance problems that required constant attention. At 23:30 hours, Washington pulled himself over the edge of the ridge and surveyed the terrain ahead. The summit was approximately 20 feet wide, providing adequate space for the team to prepare for the descent phase of their mission. More importantly, the ridge offered a clear view of the Japanese bunker complex 40 feet below and slightly to the east. The bunker appeared larger from above than it had from ground level, and Washington could now see architectural details that had been invisible during his previous reconnaissance. The roof was reinforced concrete approximately 18 inches thick, with two visible ventilation shafts and what appeared to be an access hatch secured with metal fittings. Japanese defensive positions were visible around the bunker's perimeter, but as Washington had predicted, there were no observable defenses on the roof itself. The enemy had apparently concluded that the roof was inaccessible and had concentrated their defensive preparations on the expected avenues of approach. Washington secured his rappelling rope to a coral outcropping that he judged capable of supporting the necessary loads. The rope would need to bear not only his body weight during the descent, but also the dynamic forces generated if he needed to move quickly or change direction. He tested the anchor point with gradually increasing loads before committing to the descent. Chen established radio contact with the command post and reported their successful arrival at the rappelling point. Captain Mitchell's response indicated that Fox Company remained in position and ready to exploit any success achieved by the assault team. There had been no unusual enemy activity during their climb. O'Brien prepared the demolition charges for deployment, configuring them for timer detonation with a 15-minute delay. This would provide adequate time for Washington to place the charges, return to the ridge, and evacuate to a safe distance before the explosion. The charges were secured in a canvas bag that could be easily carried during the descent. The descent to the bunker roof proved more challenging than Washington had anticipated. The rope hung free for the first 20 feet, requiring pure rappelling technique to control his descent rate and avoid swinging into the cliff face. His steeplejack training had included extensive rappelling experience, but the conditions were more demanding than anything he had encountered in civilian work. The Japanese bunker was not silent. Washington could hear voices and movement inside as he approached the roof, reminding him that the structure contained live enemy soldiers who would certainly react violently if they detected his presence. He adjusted his descent rate to minimize any noise that might alert the defenders. Landing on the bunker roof required careful technique to avoid creating noise that would compromise the mission. Washington touched down softly and immediately moved away from the rope to assess the roof's layout in detail. The concrete surface was solid underfoot, confirming intelligence estimates about the structure's construction. The ventilation shafts were positioned as expected, but they were smaller than Washington had hoped. Each shaft was approximately 10 inches square, large enough to accommodate a demolition charge, but too small to provide human access to the bunker's interior. The access hatch was secured with a metal latch that appeared to be designed for operation from inside the bunker. Washington signaled his successful landing to Chen and O'Brien with a series of rope tugs that had been predetermined during their planning. The rope would remain in place to provide his return route, but Washington was now effectively on his own for the most dangerous phase of the operation. The sounds from inside the bunker were becoming clearer as Washington worked. He could distinguish at least 3 different voices speaking in Japanese, and the metallic sounds suggested weapons maintenance or preparation activities. The defenders were clearly alert and ready for action, making stealth absolutely essential. Washington's examination of the access hatch revealed that it was secured with a simple bar latch that could potentially be manipulated from outside. However, opening the hatch would certainly alert the defenders and eliminate any element of surprise. The ventilation shafts represented a better option for placing demolition charges without immediately compromising his position. The demolition charges that O'Brien had prepared were ideal for the confined space of the ventilation system. Washington lowered the first charge into the eastern shaft, allowing it to settle approximately 6 feet down, where it would be concealed from casual observation, but positioned to maximize destructive effect within the bunker. The second charge went into the western ventilation shaft, providing redundancy and ensuring that the explosion would affect the entire interior space. Washington set both timers for 12 minutes, providing himself adequate time to reach the ridge and evacuate to a safe distance. The return climb to the ridge required all of Washington's remaining strength and concentration. The rope stretched slightly under his weight, adding to the difficulty of the ascent, and his arms were beginning to show the accumulated fatigue from the evening's climbing. Chen and O'Brien hauled on the rope from above, providing assistance that proved essential for completing the climb. Washington reached the ridge summit with 3 minutes remaining on the demolition timers. The team immediately began their evacuation, moving quickly but carefully across the ridge toward their planned observation point, 400 feet away. The rocky terrain slowed their progress, but Washington maintained confidence that they would reach safety before the charges detonated. The explosion occurred exactly 12 minutes after Washington had initiated the timers, producing a muffled roar that echoed across the battlefield. The blast was largely contained within the bunker as Washington had planned, but sufficient pressure vented through the ventilation shafts to confirm that the charges had functioned as intended. Fox Company's assault began immediately following the explosion, with 3rd Platoon advancing rapidly toward the neutralized position. The Japanese defenders who had survived the blast were disoriented and unable to mount effective resistance. Within 30 minutes, the bunker complex was in American hands. Captain Mitchell's after-action report noted that Washington's unconventional approach had achieved in less than 4 hours what conventional assault tactics had failed to accomplish in 3 days. The operation had resulted in the elimination of a major defensive position without the loss of a single Marine, a remarkable achievement in the brutal fighting that characterized the Peleliu campaign. The success of Washington's rope and knife technique attracted immediate attention from higher headquarters. Within 48 hours, representatives from Division Intelligence had arrived to document the operation and interview the participants. The innovative approach was rapidly disseminated throughout Marine Corps units operating in the Pacific Theater. Major General William Rupertus, commanding general of the 1st Marine Division, personally commended Washington for his initiative and tactical innovation. The commendation noted that Washington's civilian skills had been creatively adapted to solve a military problem that conventional doctrine had been unable to address effectively. Corporal Washington demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking that wins campaigns, General Rupertus stated during the presentation ceremony. He saw possibilities that others missed and had the courage to act on his convictions. The broader implications of Washington's success extended far beyond the immediate tactical victory. Marine Corps training programs began incorporating climbing and rope techniques into their advanced infantry curricula, recognizing that vertical approaches could provide solutions to seemingly impossible tactical problems. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison submitted Washington's name for the Navy Cross, the Marine Corps' 2nd highest decoration for valor. The recommendation emphasized not only Washington's personal courage, but also his innovative thinking and technical expertise under combat conditions. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism while serving as a squad leader with Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division, during action against enemy Japanese forces on Peleliu Island, Palau Islands, September 15, 1944. When his company was stopped by a strongly fortified enemy bunker complex that had resisted 3 days of conventional assault, Corporal Washington devised and executed a daring plan to approach the position from above using specialized climbing techniques. Working alone and under extreme danger, he successfully placed demolition charges that neutralized the position and enabled his company to continue its advance. His initiative, technical skill, and personal courage reflect great credit upon himself and the Marine Corps. The Navy Cross presentation ceremony took place 3 weeks later on Pavuvu Island, where the 1st Marine Division had been withdrawn for rest and refitting. Washington's parents traveled from Detroit to attend the ceremony, marking the first time they had seen their son since his deployment to the Pacific. Marcus Washington, Jimmy's father, spoke with obvious pride about his son's achievement. Jimmy always could see solutions that other folks missed, he told the assembled Marines and correspondents. Even as a boy, he would find ways to fix things that seemed impossible. Sarah Washington added, "We are proud of what he accomplished, but we are prouder that he found a way to save lives. That is the kind of young man we raised." The ceremony included representatives from the NAACP and the Negro Press, reflecting the broader significance of Washington's achievement for African American military service. His success challenged prevailing assumptions about the capabilities of black servicemen and provided a powerful example of individual excellence under pressure. Thurgood Marshall, who attended the ceremony as a correspondent for the NAACP, wrote, "Corporal Washington's achievement demonstrates that courage, intelligence, and innovation are qualities that transcend racial boundaries. His success on Peleliu proves that American military effectiveness is enhanced when all citizens are allowed to contribute their talents to the common defense." The technical aspects of Washington's climbing technique were studied extensively by Marine Corps engineers and training specialists. His use of commercial climbing equipment, adapted for military applications, led to the development of new assault tactics that would be employed throughout the remainder of the Pacific Campaign. The Marine Corps Equipment Board, conducted a comprehensive review of Washington's equipment and methods, resulting in formal recommendations for specialized climbing gear to be included in unit inventories. The board's report noted that commercial climbing equipment properly adapted provides capabilities that standard military equipment cannot match. Washington's post-mission interviews revealed the psychological challenges he had faced during the operation. The hardest part was not the climbing, he told Marine Corps historians. It was knowing that if I made a mistake, good Marines would continue dying trying to take that position the conventional way. The pressure of representing his race while performing under combat conditions added another dimension to Washington's stress. I knew that some people would judge all colored Marines based on what I did that night, he reflected. That made failure impossible to accept. Chen and O'Brien both received Bronze Star medals for their support roles in the operation. Their willingness to volunteer for the dangerous mission and their professional execution of their assigned tasks were essential to the overall success. Chen's perspective on the mission emphasized the importance of teamwork and trust. Jimmy planned everything perfectly, but we all had to execute our parts without mistakes. One error by any of us would have meant failure for everyone. O'Brien focused on the technical challenges they had overcome. It was not just about climbing. Every piece of equipment had to work exactly right. Every timer had to function perfectly. Jimmy thought through all those details. The Japanese perspective on Washington's successful assault provided additional insights into the effectiveness of his unconventional approach. Interrogations of captured defenders revealed that they had never considered the possibility of an attack from above and had no contingency plans for defending against such an approach. Colonel Takeshi Nakamura, the Japanese commander responsible for the sector that included Washington's target bunker, acknowledged in post-conflict interviews that the attack had been completely unexpected and technically impressive. Nakamura noted that Japanese defensive doctrine had focused on conventional approaches and had not anticipated such innovative assault techniques. The bunker design itself had been optimized for defense against frontal assault and artillery bombardment, making it highly vulnerable to the interior demolition technique that Washington employed. The explosion had been devastating precisely because the structure's strength worked against it, containing and focusing the blast effect. Captain Mitchell's detailed analysis of the operation identified several factors that had contributed to its success beyond Washington's individual skills and courage. The careful intelligence preparation, the adequate time allowed for planning and rehearsal, and the availability of appropriate equipment had all been essential elements. Corporal Washington provided the key insight and possessed the unique skills necessary for success, Mitchell wrote in his formal report. But the operation succeeded because we provided him with the support, equipment, and authority necessary to implement his plan effectively. The broader tactical implications of Washington's success extended throughout Marine Corps operations in the Pacific. Similar climbing assaults were attempted against Japanese positions on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, with varying degrees of success depending on terrain and defensive configurations. On Iwo Jima, Marine climbing teams successfully neutralized 7 heavily fortified positions using variations of Washington's technique. The volcanic terrain provided different climbing challenges, but the basic principle of attacking from unexpected directions proved applicable to various situations. The Okinawa campaign saw the most extensive use of climbing assault techniques, with specially trained Marine teams assigned to each infantry regiment. These teams, equipped with improved climbing gear based on Washington's recommendations, conducted over 30 successful operations against Japanese cave and bunker positions. Training programs established at Marine Corps bases in the United States began producing graduates specifically qualified in climbing assault techniques. These specialized Marines, known informally as cliff rats, became valuable assets for units operating in mountainous or heavily fortified terrain. The equipment developments initiated by Washington's success continued throughout the conflict and into the post-war period. The Marine Corps Equipment Board collaborated with civilian climbing equipment manufacturers to develop military-specific gear that combined the performance of commercial equipment with the durability required for combat operations. Washington's personal climbing gear including the custom knife and modified harness, was studied extensively and influenced the design of standard military climbing equipment. His innovations in rope management and anchor systems became standard practices in Marine Corps climbing training. The psychological impact of Washington's success extended far beyond its immediate tactical value. For African-American Marines serving throughout the Pacific, his achievement provided proof that exceptional performance would be recognized regardless of race. His example inspired others to seek opportunities to demonstrate their capabilities. Corporal Roosevelt Johnson, serving with the 7th Marines on Saipan, credited Washington's example with motivating his own initiative in developing improved camouflage techniques for jungle fighting. Jimmy showed us that if you had a good idea and the courage to try it, the Corps would give you the chance to prove yourself. Staff Sergeant William Thompson, who served with distinction on Iwo Jima, similarly acknowledged Washington's influence on his decision to volunteer for dangerous reconnaissance missions. After Jimmy showed what one Marine could accomplish with the right plan and enough determination, it made the rest of us want to step up and contribute. The media coverage of Washington's achievement, while limited by wartime censorship, nonetheless provided important visibility for African-American military service. Negro newspapers, particularly the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender, featured extensive coverage that emphasized both his individual achievement and its broader significance. The Pittsburgh Courier's coverage noted, "Corporal Washington's heroism on Peleliu demonstrates the fighting spirit and tactical innovation that Negro Marines bring to the Pacific conflict. His success challenges anyone who questions the combat effectiveness of colored troops." The Chicago Defender emphasized the technical aspects of Washington's achievement. The Marine Corps has officially recognized that civilian skills, properly applied, can solve military problems that conventional tactics cannot address. Corporal Washington's background as a steeplejack provided the key to a tactical problem that had stumped military professionals. White publications, including Stars and Stripes and Life magazine, also covered Washington's achievement, though with less emphasis on its racial significance. These accounts focus primarily on the innovative nature of his tactical approach and its potential applications in future operations. Life magazine's coverage included detailed diagrams of Washington's climbing route and technical explanations of the equipment he had used. The article noted that civilian expertise, when properly harnessed, can provide military capabilities that traditional training cannot match. The long-term influence of Washington's achievement extended well beyond World War II. His climbing assault technique was studied by military forces around the world and adapted for use in various conflict environments. The basic principles he demonstrated remained relevant in later conflicts involving mountainous terrain or heavily fortified positions. During the Korean conflict, Marine Corps units employed climbing assault techniques derived from Washington's innovation against Chinese positions in the mountainous terrain of the peninsula. The harsh winter conditions presented additional challenges, but the fundamental approach remained effective. The Vietnam conflict saw further development of climbing assault tactics, particularly in operations against North Vietnamese positions in the demilitarized zone and the mountainous regions near the borders with Laos and Cambodia. Marine reconnaissance teams adapted Washington's techniques for use in the jungle environment. Modern military climbing programs in the United States and allied nations continue to reference Washington's Peleliu operation as a foundational example of tactical innovation under combat conditions. His integration of civilian skills with military objectives remains a model for contemporary special operations training. The Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in California includes detailed instruction on Washington's climbing assault technique as part of its advanced curriculum. Students study not only the technical aspects of his approach, but also the decision-making process that led to his innovative solution. The equipment innovations initiated by Washington's success contributed to the development of modern military climbing gear used by special operations forces worldwide. His emphasis on reliable, simple equipment that could function under extreme conditions influenced design philosophy that continues to guide equipment development. Washington's post-conflict military service included assignments to Marine Corps training commands, where he helped develop the climbing instruction programs that emerged from his combat innovation. His expertise was particularly valuable in establishing safety procedures and equipment standards for climbing operations. After leaving military service in 1946, Washington returned to Detroit, where he established a steeplejack and industrial climbing company that employed many fellow veterans. His business success provided another example of how military skills could be successfully adapted to civilian applications. The Washington Climbing Company became one of the largest industrial climbing services in the Midwest, maintaining facilities throughout the automotive industry's infrastructure. The company's safety record and technical capabilities earned recognition throughout the construction and maintenance industries. Washington's civilian success included innovations in industrial safety equipment and climbing techniques that influenced practices throughout the steeplejack profession. His military experience had taught him to approach problems systematically and to prioritize safety in high-risk operations. The company's employment practices reflected Washington's commitment to providing opportunities for other veterans, particularly African-American servicemen, who faced employment discrimination in the post-war period. His hiring policies focused on qualifications and character rather than race, providing jobs for qualified individuals regardless of background. Community involvement became an important aspect of Washington's civilian life. He served on the board of the local Urban League chapter and provided financial support for educational programs designed to increase opportunities for minority youth in technical fields. Washington's speaking engagements at schools and community organizations emphasized the importance of education, technical training, and perseverance in achieving success. His presentations typically included discussions of his military service, but focused primarily on the civilian applications of his climbing expertise. The marriage of James Washington to Marie Thompson in 1947 produced 3 children who all pursued careers in technical fields. His emphasis on education and technical competence influenced his children's career choices and their approach to problem-solving. The Washington family became prominent in Detroit's African-American professional community, with James serving as an example of how military service and technical expertise could provide pathways to civilian success despite racial barriers. Marie Washington's own career as a registered nurse complemented her husband's business activities, and the couple became known for their community involvement and support for civil rights organizations. Their partnership demonstrated the possibilities for African-American families in the post-war period. The Korean conflict brought James Washington back to active military service as a reservist called to support Marine Corps training programs. His expertise in climbing operations was needed to train Marines preparing for the mountainous terrain of Korea. During his reserve service, Washington developed improved training protocols for climbing operations in winter conditions, addressing challenges that had not been anticipated during his original Pacific service. His innovations in cold-weather climbing techniques proved valuable for Marines operating in Korean mountain conditions. The training programs that Washington helped develop during the Korean period became permanent components of Marine Corps mountain warfare instruction. His emphasis on safety, systematic preparation, and equipment reliability influenced training standards that remained in effect for decades. Washington's reserve service also included development work on specialized climbing equipment designed specifically for military applications. His collaboration with equipment manufacturers produced several innovations that improved the performance and safety of military climbing gear. The civilian recognition that Washington received for his military achievement included several honorary awards from professional organizations within the construction and maintenance industries. The International Association of Steeplejacks presented him with their highest honor for contributions to the profession. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People recognized Washington with their Spingarn Medal in 1952, acknowledging both his military achievement and his subsequent civilian contributions to the African-American community. The citation accompanying the Spingarn Medal noted, "James Washington exemplifies the highest qualities of American citizenship through his military service, his business success, and his commitment to community advancement. His achievement on Peleliu demonstrated that individual excellence knows no racial boundaries. while his civilian career has provided opportunities and inspiration for countless others. The presentation ceremony for the Spingarn Medal included remarks by Thurgood Marshall, who had covered Washington's Navy Cross presentation in 1944. Marshall noted the continuing significance of Washington's military achievement in the context of ongoing civil rights struggles. Corporal Washington proved in 1944 what we continue to argue today, Marshall stated. Individual merit and national service should be the only standards by which Americans are judged. His courage on Peleliu and his success in civilian life demonstrate the contributions that all Americans can make when given the opportunity. The business success of the Washington Climbing Company provided Washington with the financial resources to support civil rights organizations and educational institutions. His philanthropic activities focused particularly on technical education programs designed to increase opportunities for minority students. The Washington Foundation, established in 1955, provided scholarships for students pursuing engineering and technical training programs. The Foundation's emphasis on practical skills and professional competence reflected Washington's belief that technical expertise provided the best pathway to economic advancement. Educational institutions throughout the Midwest benefited from Washington Foundation support, with particular emphasis on programs at historically black colleges and universities. The Foundation's grants supported both student scholarships and faculty development programs in engineering and technical fields. Washington's personal involvement in Foundation activities included regular visits to recipient institutions, where he spoke to students about career opportunities in technical fields. His presentations emphasized the importance of excellence, preparation, and perseverance in achieving professional success. The continuing influence of Washington's military achievement was demonstrated during the Vietnam conflict, when Marine Corps units again employed climbing assault techniques in mountainous terrain. His tactical innovation remained relevant 20 years after its original development. Marine Corps training manuals continued to reference Washington's Peleliu operation as an example of tactical flexibility and individual initiative. His integration of civilian skills with military objectives became a standard case study in military leadership courses. The equipment developments that began with Washington's success contributed to the advancement of civilian climbing technology as well as military applications. His emphasis on reliable, simple gear influenced the development of recreational climbing equipment that benefited outdoor enthusiasts worldwide. Climbing equipment manufacturers continued to consult with Washington throughout his civilian career, seeking his expertise on safety features and performance characteristics. His reputation for practical knowledge and safety consciousness made him a valued advisor to the industry. The international recognition of Washington's achievement included invitations to speak at military academies and professional conferences in several allied nations. His presentations focused on tactical innovation and the importance of individual initiative in military operations. British and Canadian military academies included Washington's case study in their curricula, emphasizing the broader principles of tactical flexibility rather than the specific technical details of climbing operations. His example influenced military training programs throughout the English-speaking world. The French military, with its emphasis on individual initiative and tactical innovation, was particularly interested in Washington's approach to problem-solving under combat conditions. French mountain warfare specialists studied his techniques and adapted them for use in alpine conditions. Washington's speaking engagements at international military conferences provided opportunities to share American tactical innovations with Allied forces. His presentations typically emphasized the importance of creative thinking and individual initiative in military operations. The retirement of James Washington from active business management in 1975 marked the end of an era in both military and civilian climbing applications. His influence on tactical innovation, equipment development, and professional practices had extended far beyond his original wartime achievement. The Washington Climbing Company continued operations under the management of his son David Washington, who had studied engineering and business administration before joining the family firm. The transition ensured continuity of the company's technical expertise and safety standards. James Washington's retirement activities included writing a memoir that detailed both his military service and civilian career. The book, titled Climbing to Victory, A Marine's Journey from Peleliu to Detroit, provided insights into the challenges and opportunities facing African-American veterans in the post-war period. The memoir included technical discussions of climbing techniques and equipment, making it valuable for both military historians and climbing enthusiasts. Washington's detailed descriptions of his tactical thinking provided insights into the decision-making process that had led to his innovative solution on Peleliu. Academic recognition of Washington's achievement included honorary doctorate degrees from several universities, acknowledging his contributions to both military science and civilian industry. These honors recognized the broader significance of his career beyond the specific wartime achievement. The University of Michigan's Engineering School established the James Washington Chair in Industrial Safety, recognizing his contributions to workplace safety in high-risk occupations. The endowed position supported research into safety equipment and procedures for workers in dangerous environments. Wayne State University's History Department included Washington's story in its curriculum on African-American military service, emphasizing both his individual achievement and its broader significance for civil rights progress. Student response to these presentations was consistently positive. The continuing legacy of Washington's achievement was demonstrated through the careers of Marines who had served under him or been trained using techniques he had developed. Many of these individuals went on to distinguished military careers that included their own innovations and achievements. Colonel Robert Chen, son of Private First Class David Chen, who had participated in the original Peleliu operation, commanded Marine Corps mountain warfare training programs during the Vietnam era. His father's experience had influenced his own interest in specialized tactics and training. Brigadier General Michael O'Brien, Jr., son of Lance Corporal Michael O'Brien, served as Commanding General of the Marine Corps Combat Development Command, where he oversaw the development of modern special operations capabilities. His father's participation in Washington's operation had influenced the family's military tradition. The influence of Washington's tactical innovation extended beyond the Marine Corps to other military services and special operations organizations. His emphasis on creative problem-solving and the application of civilian skills to military challenges became part of the broader special operations philosophy. Army Special Forces training programs incorporated climbing techniques derived from Washington's innovations, adapting them for use in various terrain conditions and operational environments. The basic principles of vertical assault remained applicable across different military contexts. Navy SEAL training included instruction in climbing operations that referenced Washington's pioneering work on Peleliu. His integration of technical climbing skills with combat operations provided a foundation for modern special operations training. Air Force Special Operations units studied Washington's approach to equipment selection and mission planning, emphasizing his systematic preparation and attention to safety details. His example influenced training standards throughout the special operations community. The international influence of Washington's achievement continued through military exchange programs that shared American tactical innovations with Allied forces. His climbing assault technique was studied and adapted by special forces units throughout NATO and other Allied organizations. Israeli military forces, facing similar challenges in mountainous and urban terrain, developed their own variations of Washington's climbing assault techniques. The Israeli adaptations emphasized rapid deployment and minimal equipment requirements. British Special Air Service training incorporated elements of Washington's approach to vertical operations, particularly his emphasis on thorough reconnaissance and careful equipment selection. The SAS adaptations focused on maritime and urban applications. German mountain warfare specialists studied Washington's techniques for potential application in alpine conditions, emphasizing the safety procedures and equipment innovations he had developed. The German adaptations addressed the specific challenges of high-altitude operations. The continuing evolution of climbing technology owed much to the foundation that Washington had established through his wartime innovation and subsequent civilian career. His emphasis on reliability and simplicity influenced equipment design philosophy throughout the industry. Modern military climbing gear incorporated design principles that Washington had pioneered, including redundant safety systems and simplified operation procedures. His influence on equipment development continued long after his retirement from active involvement. The civilian climbing industry benefited from military innovations that had originated with Washington's wartime achievement. Cross-pollination between military and civilian applications produced equipment improvements that benefited both communities. Safety standards in both military and civilian climbing applications reflected Washington's emphasis on systematic preparation and risk management. His approach to safety planning became standard practice throughout the climbing community. The educational institutions that had benefited from Washington Foundation support continued to produce graduates who made significant contributions to engineering and technical fields. The Foundation's emphasis on practical skills and professional competence produced measurable results. The scholarship recipients from Washington Foundation programs achieved success rates significantly above average, demonstrating the effectiveness of the Foundation's selection criteria and support programs. Many recipients went on to establish their own successful careers and businesses. The engineering program supported by Washington Foundation grants developed reputations for excellence in practical applications and safety consciousness. The Foundation's emphasis on these areas influenced curriculum development at recipient institutions. The continuing influence of Washington's educational philosophy was evident in the careers of Foundation scholarship recipients who went on to become leaders in their respective fields. Their achievements reflected the Foundation's emphasis on excellence and professional development. The community recognition that Washington received throughout his civilian career reflected both his individual achievements and his contributions to civil rights progress. His success provided an example of what was possible when talent was given opportunity, regardless of racial barriers. Local civil rights organizations consistently recognized Washington's contributions to community advancement, both through his business activities and his support for educational programs. His example inspired others to pursue excellence despite discriminatory barriers. The integration of Detroit's construction and maintenance industries owed much to Washington's leadership and example. His hiring practices and professional standards influenced other employers to focus on qualifications rather than race. The broader civil rights movement benefited from Washington's example of excellence and achievement, which provided concrete evidence of African American capabilities in technical and professional fields. His success supported arguments for equal opportunity based on merit. The family legacy of the Washington family continued through the achievements of James Washington's children and grandchildren, who pursued careers in engineering, medicine, and business. The family's commitment to excellence and community service influenced multiple generations. The Washington Climbing Company's continuing operations under second and third generation management demonstrated the sustainability of the business principles that James Washington had established. The company's growth and success validated his approach to business development. The technical innovations that had originated with Washington's climbing expertise continued to influence industrial safety practices throughout the construction and maintenance industries. His emphasis on systematic safety planning became standard practice. The international recognition of Washington's contributions included honors from climbing and mountaineering organizations worldwide. His pioneering work in tactical climbing applications was acknowledged by both military and civilian climbing communities. The Royal Geographical Society of London recognized Washington's contributions to climbing techniques and safety procedures with an honorary fellowship, acknowledging his influence on mountaineering practices worldwide. The International Union of Alpinist Associations presented Washington with their highest honor for contributions to climbing safety and technical development. The citation noted his role in establishing safety standards that had saved countless lives. The American Alpine Club elected Washington to honorary membership in recognition of his contributions to climbing technique and equipment development. His influence on American climbing practices was acknowledged by both military and civilian climbing communities. The continuing relevance of Washington's achievement was demonstrated through its inclusion in modern military training programs that emphasized tactical innovation and creative problem-solving. His example remained influential decades after the original operation. Staff colleges throughout the American military establishment included Washington's case study in their curricula on tactical innovation and leadership under pressure. His decision-making process provided insights that remained applicable to contemporary military challenges. The Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth included detailed analysis of Washington's operation in its advanced tactics curriculum, emphasizing the broader principles rather than the specific technical details of climbing operations. The Naval War College incorporated Washington's case study into its programs on maritime special operations, adapting his principles of vertical assault for potential naval applications. His emphasis on thorough preparation influenced naval special operations training. The Air Force Air War College studied Washington's approach to mission planning and equipment selection as an example of effective preparation for high-risk operations. His systematic methodology influenced Air Force Special Operations training standards. The influence of Washington's achievement on contemporary special operations capabilities was evident in the continued use of climbing techniques derived from his original innovation. Modern special operations units employed equipment and procedures that traced their development to his wartime breakthrough. Special Operations Command training facilities included climbing walls and rappelling towers that enabled practice of techniques originally developed by Washington on Peleliu. His tactical innovation had become a standard component of special operations training. The equipment used by modern special operations climbers incorporated design features that Washington had pioneered, including simplified operation procedures and redundant safety systems. His influence on equipment development remained evident in contemporary gear. The training methodologies employed by special operations climbing instructors reflected Washington's emphasis on systematic preparation, safety consciousness, and creative problem-solving. His approach to training had influenced instruction techniques throughout the special operations community. The continuing study of Washington's achievement by military historians and tactical analysts produced new insights into the factors that had contributed to his success. Detailed analysis revealed the complexity of his achievement and its broader implications for military innovation. The Marine Corps Historical Foundation sponsored comprehensive research into Washington's operation, producing detailed studies that examined both the tactical and technical aspects of his achievement. These studies provided insights valuable for contemporary military training. Academic historians studying World War II innovation included Washington's achievement in their analyses of tactical development during the Pacific Campaign. His contribution to Marine Corps capabilities was recognized as a significant factor in operational success. Military technology historians examined Washington's equipment innovations and their influence on subsequent development of climbing gear and assault techniques. His role in bridging civilian and military applications was acknowledged as particularly significant. The personal satisfaction that James Washington derived from his long career reflected both his individual achievements and his contributions to the advancement of opportunities for others. His success had opened doors that benefited subsequent generations. The recognition that Washington received from fellow veterans acknowledged not only his wartime achievement, but also his subsequent contributions to veteran welfare and community development. His leadership in veteran affairs was particularly valued by fellow African-American servicemen. Veteran organizations throughout the Midwest consistently honored Washington for his contributions to veteran employment and education programs. His advocacy for veteran rights was recognized as particularly effective in achieving concrete improvements. The networking opportunities that Washington created through his business and foundation activities helped many veterans transition successfully to civilian careers. His mentorship was particularly valuable for individuals facing discrimination in civilian employment. The satisfaction that Washington expressed in interviews during his later years focused on the opportunities he had been able to create for others rather than his personal achievements. His legacy was measured primarily in terms of the success of those he had helped. The continued operation of Washington Foundation programs ensured that his commitment to educational opportunity would extend beyond his lifetime. The Foundation's endowment provided sustainable support for scholarship and educational development programs. The annual Washington Scholarship Awards continued to support students pursuing technical and engineering education, maintaining his emphasis on practical skills and professional competence. The scholarship recipients achieved success rates that validated the Foundation's selection criteria. The Washington Family Foundation, established by his children, expanded the scope of educational support to include programs for disadvantaged youth interested in technical careers. The expanded foundation continued James Washington's commitment to creating opportunities, and that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.